Hello, beautiful community. I've been less vertical the last day or two, and it's given me the opportunity to just browse very little, a bit, some of the pages upon pages upon pages of questions that I have, with which I'm going to catch up, actually. I'm committed to that. So a lot of people are going to get answers with massive delays. But the morale of the Russian invaders of Ukraine is something that's come up a bit. And I want to leave especially military questions to military experts. But there is a dimension to these questions about the low morale of the Russian military that are about political psychology. And so let's answer this question. Why is morale low? And is that a completely insoluble problems for the Russians? Or could they do something about that? So let's have a sort of very quick casual go at this. Given your informational diet, dear community, you probably watch several channels that routinely give you pictorial evidence of hopelessness, corruption, unconstructive and abusive hierarchy, etc., in the Russian military, and give you the sense that Russian soldiers, either don't want to be there in Ukraine, or they want to be there, but they don't want to get shot, or they don't know quite why they're there, or they're just desperate and fatalistic, and, that was the least bad choice of a bad bunch of choices, and so there they are, but it's not exactly clear why. And this crisis of morale is leading to various kinds of consequences. So you're seeing a lot of that. What's the political psychology behind that? And is it fixable in principle? How far is it to do with these conversations we have had about the depoliticization of the Russian population? How far is it connected with conversations we've had about this totalitarian turn in Russia? If the totalitarian turn in Russia escalated, could the problems of low morale be fixed? And so let's have a quick go at this. There is no problem with Ukrainian morale in big picture terms for a very, very simple reason. Ukrainians are fighting for their freedom. This war is existential. And that is so true that even if all support to Ukraine were removed, they'd fight. And that's because Mr. Putin's intent, insofar as Ukrainians are able to figure it out, is somehow enmeshed with genocidal rhetoric. So this is an invasion that is unlimited, as it were, in ambition, and that's still true even though Russians might be fighting now for a bit of southeastern Ukraine, and it's backed by genocidal rhetoric. Ukrainians are being told that they aren't real. They aren't being told they're sort of different and inferior to Russians. It's a different kind of imperial domination. They're being told that they're just Russians who've forgotten they're Russian. And that is very, very different to Russia coming along and saying, excuse me, you have a right to exist, we have a right to exist, there's no problem. But that bit of your territory, in our view, it's ours. So you can say goodbye to it. But that's all we're interested in. You have a right to exist, you are different to us, we don't want to take you over completely. But you just have a bit of territory that we've decided because Mr. Putin's historical fantasies have told him so, is ours. So what we're going to do is we're going to come and take that territory. That is absolutely not what's happening. So Ukrainians are being told they aren't real. And that means that it's not possible to exhaust Ukrainian spirit in fighting this invasion, as it potentially would be if Russia just said, this is the clear bit of territorial acquisition we're after, just going to wait till Ukraine gets exhausted and says, oh, God damn it, have it. They wouldn't want to give it to Russia because it's theirs, but it would be a very existentially different situation. So this thing is existential for Ukraine, and their morale can't lapse because they're human. Human beings are going to fight for their freedom to exist, right? And retain very basic bits of their identity that make them who they are, right? It's just not a question about that. So that's the Ukrainian side. There's going to be very, very limited room for Ukrainian spirit to break. Ukrainian political ambitions might change if the war goes badly for them, but that spirit cannot change. For Russia, it's very different. Now, I would say there are two interesting remarks to make about the Russian soldiers in Ukraine, and there's probably quite a few more, but two briefly. The first is that, in a certain sense, that military, these soldiers are, what you're seeing in Ukraine, are an expression of life in sort of small Russian towns. You're talking about extraordinary levels of fatalism, a kind of depoliticized fatalism. You're talking about extraordinary levels of inequality and extraordinary levels of debt very often, right? And so people are feeling alienated, suffocated, and despairing, and reckless, consequently, with their lives. So that is, to a large extent, the pool that's being drawn from. These are very desperate, or at least despairing, people. The second thing is that no Kremlin justification of the war sticks, or in the foreseeable future could stick, for the Russian soldiers in Ukraine, right? Nobody can seriously, put it this way, it's not possible on any large scale for any of the Kremlin's justifications to be taken seriously all the way down. So there's no way large numbers of Russian soldiers are capable of believing that stuff. There's a recent study about depoliticization with a big emphasis on Russia. We'll talk about that study at some point, actually. That brings to life the concept of inferred justification. And that's the idea we need to go to understand what could the Russian soldier who is, if you like, most ideologically motivated, what are they going to think? And here's what they're going to think. They're going to be engaged in a kind of inferred justification. They're going to think, I don't know why I am here, but Mr. Putin is my president, and this is crazy. So he would not have done this unless there was some good reason, even though I don't know what it is. That would be how I would reconstruct the most, if you like, motivated psychology of the most, if you like, quasi-ideologically aligned Russian soldier, somebody who's closest to being sort of on board with the project. They're not going to be on board with the project for some kind of justification they can articulate, actually. The most gung-ho they can get is to say, I believe we're here for a reason, even though I don't know what it is. And the only way to jump out of that dynamic of just inferred justification is for the Putin regime to straighten its message ideologically and then successfully impose it. It doesn't have the capacity to successfully impose its message for now, and it doesn't have the capacity or the desire to straighten its message. It's deliberately doing mixed messaging. It's deliberately giving 7 different justifications for the war per week. I'm exaggerating, right? So for the foreseeable future, let us say the next few years, because if this war is going on in 2030, then things could be different. Russia could have somehow fascistized, and the young people in Russia, this is unlikely actually, they could have been brainwashed into some kind of new ideology. But for now, the best they can do is this business of inferred justification. And I'm sorry, there's a ceiling to how far you're going to be motivated by the thought, I don't know why I'm here, but the reason must be very important. No, you've got to know the reason. You've got to own the reason. And it is impossible for the Russians to create a situation where their soldiers know and own the reason. This was a very inarticulate rant, but I hope it was of some value. Lots of love and talk soon.